Hi, I'm Karen Brown, and I'm an unconscious mind expert in the field of leadership and professional performance. And today on Dove Barron's podcast, we are talking about the controversial subject of how the unconscious mind works and how it actually holds you back from achieving your highest potential and performance. Tune in.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dove Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dove Barron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dove Barron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dove Barron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Dove Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series. I'm your host, Dove Barron, founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness so that you can reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. Today, we'll be taking an insider look at that inner saboteur that keeps you from reaching your full potential. Remember, you can chat about this episode of the show or past episodes in our Facebook community by simply going to Dove Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Podcast inside Facebook. If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. Remember, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you tune into podcasts. However, we always need your help in staying relevant. So please get yourself over to iTunes, rate, review, and please subscribe to the show. You can also catch us on traditional radio stations across the United States every Monday and Thursday. We are all the way from Tampa, Florida to Colorado Springs, Colorado. You can look for us on Roku TV, where there's over 100,000 subscribers. And if you're a regular listener, then a big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 listeners globally. With a potential reach of 2.5 to 4 million listeners for every show, we are honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. You can also catch us on Google Home and Alexa by saying, play Dove Barron podcast. Again, thank you for sharing the show with everyone you know. All right. Let's strip it down and dive right in. As a leader, whether you're a CEO, someone in the sales suite, a sales leader, an entrepreneur, a leader in any capacity, you have got to know that life, leadership, and excellence are not sprints, but rather a marathon. In fact, the truth is that oftentimes it can seem more like an ultra marathon. But what is the difference between those who keep going when the going gets tough and then tougher versus those who seemingly are very strong people who just feel like they've got nothing left? Moreover, how can you find that inner fuel to keep competing at the highest possible level, removing whatever that inner governor is that stops you from excelling to a place you've only dreamed of? Well, stay tuned because you're about to find out. My guest today is Karen Brown. She is an unconscious mind expert in the field of leadership and professional performance. She is a world-class ultra endurance athlete who's competed in one of the toughest races in the world and finished. Karen Brown has combined her experience as an Ironman world competition competitor with the scientifically proven coaching techniques in a program designed to help leaders unlimit their beliefs and excel in ways they only dreamed of. In fact, that is the title of her book, Unlimiting Your Beliefs. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and help me to welcome Karen Brown! Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Dove. What a pleasure to be here.
I'm really grateful to have you here. It took a while for us to get it together, but we're glad you're on with us. So this is an interesting combination because we've got this ultra marathon athletics, we've got leadership, we've got brain science, we've got a lot of pieces to put into this that I want to just help people to grasp. But before I do, let's just talk about that grueling competition, competing in an Ironman world competition. Tell our viewers, because I'm sure there's many of our viewers and listeners who don't even know what that championship is. So just give them a little bit of a framework, a reference point, if you will.
Yes. So the Ironman World Championships is really where the best of the best across the globe come together in the quintessential, I think, human physical challenge. And it goes like this: 2.4-mile swim in the ocean, followed by a 112-mile bike ride, finished with a marathon, and it's all done contiguously in one day. You've got 17 hours to finish the entire thing. So often times, like I did, you have finishers coming across the line at night up until midnight.
Wow. And how long was your prep for that?
2 years.
Yeah,
It was actually interesting story. It was actually 28 years plus 2. Because for 28 years, I held myself back from pursuing that dream through something called limiting beliefs, which I later discovered the science behind those, and that they actually are a scientifically proven thing, and meaning there's also a scientific antidote to them, if you will. And then once I went all in to pursue that dream and use the methods and the methodologies of the unconscious mind, leveraging that, it only took me 2 years to cross the line at the World Championships as an amateur athlete at the age of 46.
That's fantastic. Were you always an athlete? Did you always compete in something?
Yes, I was always active, meaning, I would go to the gym 5 days a week. Then I was a recreational mountain biker. I was a recreational runner. Truth be told, though, I had never run a marathon. I wasn't a properly trained swimmer, which meant anytime I got into the pool, like I could keep from drowning, but if there were folks on the sidelines watching me, they would think maybe I needed some help. I needed some assistance.
Now there's a future ultra-marathon competitor who looks like they're flailing in the water and may drown in the 3-foot end of the pool.
Yes. That
Perfect.
was me. Yeah. And I had never ridden a road bike.
Wow.
So this was not naturally my repertoire. Also, I am not a naturally talented athlete. I have to work my ass off at this, in a physical sense. And although I was a competitor, I was also only competing in things that I knew I could accomplish. I wasn't signing up for anything that was going to take me to the brink or beyond of my perceived limits until I thought about the Ironman.
So what made you even consider that? Because everything you just said says, okay, well, don't do that. Why did you consider that? I mean, you realized later that you had these limiting beliefs that were in the way, but before that, what made you even think, well, oh yeah, this is the thing to do?
The thing that made me consider it is that when I was 14 years old, I saw television coverage of the Ironman, and it stopped me dead in my tracks. First of all, because it scared me. Like I literally looked at those athletes and thought, what is this that compels these people to do this, to go all day in the grueling heat and wind and sometimes rain and cold and everything else, and to put it all on the line and to force themselves to go beyond their perceived comfort zone, far beyond their perception of their comfort zone. So that was number one. And number two was that I had this nagging feeling deep inside when I watched the Ironman that what if I have what it takes to do that and I'm not tapping into it? What if I am living a small, safe life, only doing what I know I can accomplish? And that feeling started to sicken me, and it started to grow over those 28 years, right? Because that feeling had some emotions tied with it. And ultimately, I know everyone can relate to this, that I thought I could do it. And that's what was causing those feelings and that emotional reaction.
Now, it's interesting because you brought up several things there, because for, you and I understand limiting beliefs, the psychology of limiting beliefs, but I think that first of all, unconscious limiting beliefs, the problem with that is they're unconscious. And second of all, is that unconscious limiting beliefs aren't called limiting beliefs. They're called facts to the person who holds them. So the fact is, I'm 46 years old. I can't enter in an ultra marathon. The fact is, when I'm swimming in 3-foot end, I look like I'm going to drown. How the hell am I supposed to swim all that way? I've never run a marathon, and I've never even been on a road bike. These are all facts to the mind. So as our viewers and listeners are listening in, they may not be aware of, quote, limiting beliefs as such. What they're aware of is their disabilities, their inabilities, their facts about who they are and what they're capable of based on history, which has also reinforced the crappy beliefs. So even to get to that place, you had to overcome a certain belief, or even around, because you said you were in your 40s when you first did it. What was the first sort of endeavor into confronting those beliefs about what you were capable of?
That's a great question. So here's how this worked, and how it worked for me, and also why I wrote the book about this, because I wanted everyone to have this information. I wanted it to be accessible to everyone, because this is the way everyone's unconscious mind works. It's exactly what you said, that we think these things are facts, but in reality, they are these things called limiting beliefs. So it would work like this for me, where for 28 years, I would say to myself, and this came from a limiting decision that came from comparison when I was very young. And it went exactly like this. Well, those people on TV doing the Ironman, they are elite. They are athletes that are at a very, very high level. And I am down here, this lowly recreational amateur athlete that can't swim and can't ride a road bike, et cetera, hasn't run a marathon. So how could I possibly compete against these people, right? That is the essence of a limiting belief. And it's a decision that we make that is really our unconscious mind just trying to protect us from something that it interprets as a threat or dangerous, right? That might be a threat to our life or our way of life. And so it just steps in to protect us. Nope, poof, nope, not going to have what it takes. I compared myself to the elite athletes at the World Championships, and I'm not like them. I can see the gap between us. And then the unconscious mind interprets that as fact. That is evidence, right? So then I just started carrying that with me. Every single time I would see the Ironman, I'd have that same limiting belief coming from the same limiting decision until, and that's nothing more than a habitual thought pattern, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But we think it's fact, and therefore that it's hard evidence. There's nothing we can do about that. But here's why I think this topic and this piece of information is so compelling, because it is not fact. And I was taking that as fact for 28 years. And I know people who have done the same thing in their life or their business or, something similar for longer than 28 years.
Sure.
That ultimately they peeled back the layers, they undid the evidence, they, put it under a microscope and ultimately found, oh, wait a minute. What I felt inside, that nagging feeling that, yes, I could do that, I had what it took to accomplish that, was right. It wasn't that I couldn't do it. It was that I could.
But oftentimes there's a catalyst for an awakening, because as I said, a limiting belief is not a limiting belief, is a fact, until we have some catalytic insight, some moment that goes, this is bullshit. I'm so, this is nonsense I'm making up. What was that for you at in your 40s to go, you know what? I'm not a sideline athlete. I can compete in an ultra marathon. What was it that said I can go past the limiting beliefs of my age or my category of an athlete? What was the catalyst there?
It was actually the intersection of two things. And those were, number one, I got sick and tired of that nagging feeling being so big that every time I would go to the next level in my career, in my life, I would bump up against the ceiling of that nagging feeling. Like, come on, Karen, you can do more than this. You can. There's more than this out there. So I got sick and tired of that. And second of all, I actually discovered the science behind limiting beliefs, that is a real thing. And I uncovered what actually was going on, how my unconscious mind was working to create that limiting belief. And once I saw that and the antidote to it, how to unlimit those beliefs, first of all, how to identify it, it basically began with, okay, what is stopping me from achieving pursuit of the Ironman World Championships or competing in the Ironman World Championships? That is the opener, which I like to call them, to the discovery of what my limiting belief was. So asking myself that question and paying attention to what came right away, that initial reactive thought of, well, they're up here, I'm down here, I can't possibly compete. That was the limiting belief. Now, what I also discovered after walking through that is that I had a whole page of limiting belief. I had an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper of these things that I was hauling around with me. Now, those were truly unconscious because I never knew that I was carrying those around too. So all of that stuff, it's kind of like, playing tug of war with yourself.
Absolutely,
right?
it is.
Yeah, you just keep going back and forth. Well, I think I can do this. I want to do this. Boom, you stop yourself. And that just keeps going in a pattern.
So let's talk about the invisible elephant in the room, which is what I spoke about. I was saying that, from the problem with unconscious stuff, meaning limiting beliefs which exist in the unconscious mind, is the prefix to that, which is unconscious. So, the challenge is, I have to say to people in my work, a very large part of my work is to make your unconscious conscious to you, because then you can make a change. So let's just sort of look at that for a moment and say, okay, so somebody has this nagging sense that there's something greater, what I call their deep greatness. There's something greater within them that they're capable of, that nag as you talked about it, that sense of something greater. Where can they start to become aware of the first step in that awareness of unconscious?
That's a great question. So actually on my website, I make this available to everyone for free because this is so important. And my mission with this is actually to eradicate limiting beliefs and transform the world, because I truly believe that when we all are capable, we all engage in eradicating our limiting beliefs and making them unlimiting, we will transform ourselves and our lives and the world. So it's available, and that address is available in show notes. I'm sure we'll go through that later. But sure. It's an actual form that takes you through this technique that, first of all, is sitting down in a distraction-free environment. Now, I know this can be challenging because we built for ourselves here. We're always challenge. Connected. We always have these things with us that chime and bell and vibrate and all that fun stuff.
That's the ultra marathon for most people, is to put your iPhone away.
Exactly. What do you mean put it away? What do you mean turn it off? It doesn't have an off button. No, but seriously, this takes 5 minutes or less, honestly, right, because the processing speed of your unconscious mind is far faster than your conscious mind. So this goes really fast once you sit down in a distraction-free environment. So that's step one. Step two is ask yourself that question that I just threw out there. What is stopping me from achieving X? Your dream, your goal, your big, hairy, audacious goal, your purpose, whatever that is. Then jot down what comes up, exactly how it comes up. Don't wordsmith it, don't marketing phrase it, and don't judge it, just jot it down, okay? Then seeing it on paper, and that's a key to this, you have to do it on paper. You can commit absolutely. It to digital later, but do it on paper. That is a key to unearthing the unconscious mind. Then carry that with you. That builds the awareness. You see it on the page and go, oh, these are all my unlimiting beliefs. So then the next time you have that limiting belief, you recognize it. That's when it becomes conscious and you catch it. Then the last part of it, step 3, is changing it in that moment. actively changing that thought pattern that you've had for, in my case, 28 years. And then you're telling your unconscious mind, nope, this is what we're going to think now. So what I would do in the moment is I would change it to the unlimiting version of that limited belief, which was, I will compete in the Ironman World Championships. And I told myself that out loud in front of strangers. Mm-hmm. Now, you got to realize I got some strange looks, but it also led to some really great transformations in others, because when I would share my story and what I was doing, it brought them along. It helped them. That's another reason I wrote the book. So that's it in a nutshell. 3 steps, less than 5 minutes. And you basically just have to commit to making the change.
Yeah, again, it's interesting because I think that's a great strategy. It's simple, it's like and powerful, and at the same time, I want to say to you as you listen and as you watch this, that you're going to do the exercise, you're going to get great insights, and you're going to put it into action, and that's great. And you're also going to screw up. You're also going to fall back into that whole old habitual thinking, because the truth of the matter is that neurons that fire together wire together. So the more that you've been practicing your shitty beliefs, as have I, as have all of us, for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, and you're not going to change them in 5 seconds. So like Karen was just saying, she constantly repeated the positive unlimited belief out loud in front of others. Now, there's a whole kinds of bunches of this, and maybe you're going to get into this, Karen, but I just think I want to deliver this here because I think it's important for people to grasp. Mm-hmm. Is number one, we are social creatures. And as social creatures, if we say something out loud in front of other people, the level of accountability is vastly different than if you say it to yourself. So if somebody goes, oh, I see, how's the donut? I thought you were going to be running in the ultra marathon. You're like, okay, right. So, it helps you with the inner discipline I like about that. But the other thing about it is this, and I just want to have everybody grasp this. If you are you have to be discerning about who you share those unlimiting beliefs with and those visions with, because sometimes you're going to share it with people who are going to shit on you and tell you you're not what you want to do. And most likely those are going to be the people closest to you. And here's why, just so you understand, not because they're assholes, although it's an asshole behavior, it's because you told them. You told them your limiting beliefs. They're just going to echo it back to you. And it's going to take a lot of convincing and a lot of effort for you to do differently with them. So it's really important that you call it out, you tell the people who are closest and who will love and support you. But those people who are just sort of outside of that, they're close but not really tight. You've been feeding them a story about who you are, and then doing nothing more than feeding you that story back. So there's a level of discernment here. I love the out loud. I love you tell people, but be discerning about it. Because if you don't, it's easy to get disheartened with hearing 50 people saying, oh, you'll never do that, because you're the one who told them you'll never do it. So again, the inner strength is in also having the discernment about where you share the message. Do you feel that that's the case too, Karen?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, Dov. And the other thing that happens, if it's not the fact that you told them, right, what your limiting beliefs are and who you were and that you couldn't do this, the other thing that happens is their limiting beliefs get in your way.
Absolutely.
They lay their limiting beliefs on you. And that happened to me, honestly. I had about 4 people out of my entire circle, including my then husband and my family at the time. Only 4 people immediately said, I know you can do that, and I fully support you pursuing it. How can I help you? 4 people. Okay. Right. So yeah, I think that's an excellent point of be ready for that. And now that we've put that in front of you, take notice, don't internalize it. Don't take it personally that you can't do it. No, you're done with that. Okay. Yeah. Realize that is their crap getting on you. And hey, you can share this with them. It'll help them too.
Yeah, and again, you said something very important here, which is that when you're sharing it with others, it's really important that as Karen just said, you're going to have to recognize what you're getting back is not you, it's a reflection of them. But here's the thing that I want you to know, this is about how because Karen talked about it right at the beginning here. the fact of the matter is that the ego mind is there to protect you, is there to keep you safe. And safety is, think of this word, the interchange of this word, safe and same. The more it's the same, the safer it is. Even if it's shit, if it's terrible and you hate it, it's still that you can predict it and it's the same. So every time you go to do something different, that feels to the unconscious mind like a threat. And so here's the deal. If I'm your close buddy and I hang out with you and you're going to go run an ultra marathon and I'm sitting on the couch binge watching Netflix and eating my potato chips, I'm going to start feeling bad about that. So I don't want to feel bad about my potato chips and Netflix. I actually want things to remain the same. So I'll crap on you so that you'll eat potato chips with me. And now we can all live happily ever or miserably ever after. So that's a really important point that Karen just gave you is, you know that saying, misery loves company? Misery doesn't just love company. Misery actually bonds company. It brings us together. We get bonded in our misery. And if you threaten to pull away from that, then I feel like you're abandoning me. And people who love you will say that. Oh, you think you're better than me now, don't you? Right? And they'll say shit like that. It's got nothing to do.
Or you don't have time for me now. You're too good.
Exactly. You don't have time for me now. Or you know, you're leaving me behind. No, you're staying where you are. That's the distinction. I'm not leaving you behind. You're staying where you are. I'm inviting you on the bus, but you don't want to come. Okay.
Yeah.
Powerful stuff.
What is interesting about that, though, Dove, is if people keep seeing you and you are staying the course, you are consistent, you keep doing it, you keep doing it, you keep doing it. And every time they're asking you, hey, how's that going? It's going really well. Hey, you know, I learned a couple things. I failed forward and I picked myself up and I'm still moving forward. And I've got this next race coming up, or whatever the update was that I would give them. It actually did end up bringing them along too. I mean, there were ultimately very few people in my life that just planted roots where they were and refused to move forward. And I did leave them behind, or they just stayed where they were. And I moved forward. And that's the heartening thing for me. You know, another reason that I wanted to put this book out there, because, you know, our potential is really unlimited. Mm-hmm. And really the only thing that holds us back is ourselves. That's the other thing I learned in 2010 when I had this awakening. I thought, wow, nobody's holding me back from this but me.
Right.
And that's all that's been happening this whole time, this 28 years.
It's amazing, eh? Mm-hmm. So let's bring this into the context of leadership, because, you know, we can all, I think every one of us can grasp this maybe at a personal level, that we can all have a sense of, I'm capable, you know, I mean, most of the people who listen to this show, watch this show, they're high-level achievers. Most of them are A-type personalities. They're C-suite. They're high-level executives. You know, they're people who are driven in their lives. But I think even when we're at that level, particularly when we're at that level, there's a part of us that, you know, we know there's something bigger and we can go for it. So at the same time, though, it's very easy to say, yeah, but listen, I am top of my game. I'm the CEO. I'm the founder. I've started three multi-million-dollar corporations. I've, you know, done this, done that. Let's put it into the context of leadership. Tell us about elevating leadership using the unconscious mind.
Well, first of all, we all have these things called blind spots, right? Mm-hmm. And just like my pursuit of the Ironman and this limiting belief, this thing called a limiting belief was my blind spot for 28 years, right? Because during that time, I was very outwardly successful. I was a corporate executive. I was a great leader. I always brought great results, you know, like I'm sure all of your audience members are, and they're thinking about that right now. However, what I'm happy to report is that my blind spot was pursuing the Ironman. It was this big, hairy, scary, outrageous, ridiculous, audacious dream called the Ironman. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I thought that those two things had nothing to do with each other. This big personal dream and my business or my leadership performance, I thought, oh, those are two separate things. I couldn't have been more wrong. Actually, pursuing and achieving the Ironman opened up everything in my leadership performance. It caused me to be able to self-assess and identify those blind spots, specifically in my business, in my leadership, in my professional performance, that I was still blinded to prior to that. It also helped me see how I could elevate all of those things and how I could elevate the performance, unlocking that for my team members.
Right.
Where I had a level of belief, a new level of belief about their performance, what they were capable of. And when I actually got out of their way as a leader and gave them that belief and helped them think at a higher level and identify what their purpose was, what their higher level looked like, what it would be for them to elevate, I watched them flourish like I never thought they could. I never knew that they could.
Right.
And I was able to elevate far past levels of leadership that I thought were possible prior to that. Because you know what? After the Ironman, I discovered there was something bigger than that called the Ultraman, which is truly off the rails. It is a 3-day, 320-mile triathlon.
Oh my goodness.
And at first, that blew my mind.
I'm sure.
This is what is relevant to the C-suite people listening right now, okay? Whatever's blowing your mind right now, it is absolutely possible. There is a pathway to it. You just haven't figured it out yet.
Right.
It is possible. The easier thing is to just say, oh, it's a fact, we can't do that. It's not possible. Or it's not possible in my industry. Gosh, if I had $1 for every time somebody said that, I could have retired 3 times over now.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, it's fine for that industry, but not mine.
Exactly.
No, that's crap. The feeling that you have that it is possible, like way deep down inside, let's just be real here, leaders, because we know on top of that feeling is what we covered up with, which is, oh, that's just not possible. Right? But what's below that is, what if that is possible and I just haven't figured out how to do it yet? Or I can't figure out how to do it, right? Those are called blind spots, and those are the doorway to elevating success and leadership and professional performance.
You know, these unconscious or limiting beliefs, I think it's important to know that as a leader that you do have them. And even though you've excelled and even though other people might look at you and go, I wish I was you, you're going to have them because they exist inside all of us. But the other level of this is to look at how you, and because, you know, this is just what Karen was sort of guiding us towards here, is that we do this to other people. We put those limiting beliefs on our teams. And we say, well, you know, Susie is not really capable of that, or Bob is never going to step into that. And these become our biases for how we see people. And again, as Karen talked about earlier, we're often projecting our own limiting beliefs onto other people. And this, you know, if you're going to elevate your leadership, then you've got to elevate those you lead. And that's it's a simple thing that most people forget. If you're going to elevate your leadership, you must elevate the people you lead. And all too often, we don't elevate the people we lead. We elevate our ego, we elevate our status, we elevate our PR, but we don't elevate the people that we lead. And that is vitally important for you to see the greatness in the people that you lead, to get beyond your bias. And you know, this I think is probably coming to the fore more than it has in decades, you know, as we're seeing this with women in leadership, which as you know, Karen, as you know, as a listener and a viewer, that I'm a big supporter of women's leadership. I actually think it would be a wonderful idea to swap out every male high-level leader with a female leader, even if it's for 2 years, and then let everybody sort of find their own space after that, because some people won't want to be there. And some people are like, okay, good, I'm glad I'm out. And other people are like, no, I need to be back in that role. Because I think we've got so much limiting belief about gender and leadership roles. And there's a piece that was a great piece of research that I've cited in some of my writings about women in leadership, and how back in the early 2000s, some research was done by one of the major universities, and I'm sorry, I don't remember who it was right now, and saying that women had failed as leaders in the assessments. And in the general assessment, the women were shown to be great leaders, but where they failed and why men were saying they wouldn't be leaders is because women wouldn't create a vision for the organization. And then when they dug deeper later on, of course, they went back and later on, and what they found is the women wouldn't create a vision because they didn't believe that it should be their vision. They were collaborative, right? So they were saying, no, well, I'm not going to create a vision. It's not my vision. And that was seen as a weakness. Today, we understand that that is one of the great strengths of leadership, a leader who is collaborative. And women naturally, socially conditioned wise, I understand that it's still natural, but it's still socially conditioned rather, is that women understand the power of collaboration. And I think that this is another, so a societal or a cultural limiting belief that we need to break through. What's your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. Yes. And I do think that women are natural collaborators. Absolutely. Now, I also see a little bit different evidence out there in working with female CEOs versus male CEOs. This is very interesting to me. And I've got some articles out there and a couple of speeches that I do on this topic. And I call it the oxygen mask syndrome, which goes like this. If I'm working with a male CEO, they're quick to make a decision, and they're quick, and I'm not saying that this is the right thing in every single circumstance, but by and large, they will make a decision, and if that decision means they have to put themselves first to do something, to improve, to change, whatever it is, they will usually make it very, very quickly, and they won't have to go check with someone to do it. Like, right. Oh, I need to go run this past the board or whatever. They'll just say, okay, this is the road. I need to do this. The impact and the benefit of this is going to be monumental. And I'm going to do it. And I'm just going to figure out a way to make it work. Right? Now, their female counterparts will go through the same initial thought process, but they stop themselves. And this is where the oxygen mask comes in. They stop themselves, putting themselves first, and they put everybody else first. Right. Oh, no, wait, I've got to do this for my team first. And we've got to finish these, projects first, and, on and on and on. Everything else is first. Whereas if they were on a plane and the pressure was lost, they would be dead because they would have put everyone else's mask on first and they won't have theirs on. Right. Now, I bring that up, and it's in their face sometimes and they see it. But I think women have been slow to change this, have been slow to recognize it and slow to change it. And I think it goes right back to caveman times because, women are the nurturers, they're the caregivers. And so that comes naturally to us. I get it. And when we're talking about leadership, I think that's a critical piece of self-assessment that has to be more pervasive for women to be successful as leaders.
Yeah, the ability to step into the harder decisions without being so worried about what everybody will think.
Yes.
Yeah. That's fascinating. So,
and I'm seeing evidence that it's changing. I would just like to support it to change faster.
Yeah, me too. Definitely. And again, I just think we so desperately need women leaders. Desperately. You don't have to look at the political situation in the world to know that. However, leadership is an evolution. What was something that you did for a long time that actually blocked you from the level of success you have now, which is quite extensive?
Oh, goodness. The first thing that comes to my mind is the proverbial, well, I've got to have all the answers. I'm the boss. I know best. I have the most experience. I've got to have all the answers. Everyone is relying on me to have them. No. Ugh. That, a lot of us top level leaders still suffer from that. That's also a limiting belief, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's fascinating because this is, particularly those of us who are over 40, over 45, certainly, we had this idea that leaders knew everything. We were told leaders have everything, and we were told leaders don't ask questions. They figure out a way. And that is a recipe for freaking disaster. just terrible shit. And great leaders are always asking for help and are always collaborative and are always saying, I don't know, why don't you tell me? And again, this is where I find that generally speaking, women leaders are better. They will say, that's not my area, not my strength. What do you know? Tell me what you know. Let's work this out. Let's find a way together. But I still think that if you're over 45, whether you're a man or a woman, you likely got the conditioning that you've got to know all the answers. And that is old school, bad leadership. It won't work anymore. And what's fascinating about it, as I talked about it in Fiercely Loyal, if you try and do that with millennials, you are going to lose them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You'll slit your own throat.
Yeah, because they'll just go, you know what? I can't work with you. You're arrogant. You don't know it. You know, you think you know everything. Because we had the mindset that as the senior leader, we mentor down. And what millennials understand is we mentor up, down, and sideways. They understand that. And that's the big lesson for all of us. And again, it's a limiting belief that leadership and mentorship only goes down. No, it comes up. And the quicker you can grasp that, the better you'll do. You know, absolutely right. You speak all over the world. You're a best-selling author. You've been featured in all kinds of wonderful media. What's something that most people don't know about you? You know, part of the thing with us is, you know, me too. I mean, I have this show, but I'm also, I think I've done 75 interviews this year, as in I was the guest. You know, so I feel like, you know, there's not much that I hide, or I don't try to hide anything. What's something, you know, you're out there, what's something that people would probably never know about you?
Something that people don't know about me is, you know, I struggled with my own trauma. I had a lot of developmental work to do. You know, so just as you were talking about a moment ago, you know, the way we show up is a certain, you know, persona, professionalism, that of an accomplisher, an achiever, which we are all those things.
Of course.
But at the same time, I had a lot of trauma to deal with, and I didn't realize it. You know, things like alcoholic parents and abuse, and, you know, and when you grow up with that stuff, you just kind of think, oh, that's just fact, right? I mean, it is fact. It happened. There's nothing you can do about it. But I also interpreted that as, well, doesn't everyone go through that? Doesn't everybody have that? Like, that's just the world, right? It wasn't until late in my professional life that I realized that by addressing those things, which were showing up in my professional life, like they were straight from my personal life, right? Yep. But again, I had this perception that they were separate. They were two separate things. Like, oh, that happened over here, and my professional life is squarely over here. They don't have anything to do with one another. And that's another thing that I want to bring to the forefront. You know, this is something that everybody has. I don't care if you had June Cleaver for a mom and you had the Leave It to Beaver set. There's still some things that you have had that have been traumatic. Even if you and a sibling experience the same exact thing in the same household, the two of you reacted to that differently. One of you may have, you know, interpreted that as trauma, and the other one maybe didn't. That's the thing. And that's the thing I think that connects all of us, is really doing that work, doing that developmental work, looking at those root causes, if you will, and the patterns that they create over time. Because what happens is, as we develop as human beings, as we mature, especially as we develop and go forward and pursue higher levels in our personal in our professional and leadership lives, those things really come out. Yes. And that's what I see all the time in our work with leaders. You know, our point of entry is always solid business. Hey, this is what I want to achieve. It's higher level than I've ever been before. I want to do something different than I've ever done before. And so I'm going to work with you. Great. So we start peeling that back, and it's very simple to identify, okay, what's the pattern here? You know, what's the common thread? What's the root cause of it? And it's amazing when we can actually do that for each other, whether it's in a coaching professional capacity or it's just in a human to human capacity, right? Because this is, I think, what is the biggest gift we can give each other, is being able to stand in that arena with each other and ask those questions and be there for one another for the answers. Because sometimes they are ugly and sometimes we don't want to acknowledge them, right? But it's in that area that we can work where we can make the biggest progress and growth.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that that's part of the trap of leadership, is that if you've got to know all the answers, then you've got to be perfect, and nobody's perfect. And every leader I know who is an exceptional leader is involved in their own evolution. It's not something that happens on the sidelines. It's something that they're actively in the process of evolving themselves. And as such, I like to ask my guests this question, because I think it's very easy to look at the Karen Browns of the world, the Dove Browns of the world, the Brian Tracy's of the world, whoever it is, and say, oh, well, I'm not them. Like you were looking at those ultra athletes. I'm not them. They've got their shit together. I've got this whatever it is going on in the background and nobody knows about it. But one of the things I like to point out is any decent leader, not even exceptional, decent, but any certainly exceptional leader is constantly working on themselves. What is something that you're still working on in you? What is something that you're still growing into, developing in yourself, that you're looking at and going, I'm looking to break through that part of who I was?
Wow, what a great question. This is why your podcast is so wonderful.
Thank you. That's very kind.
So the thing that I'm still working on is what I think a lot of leaders in our generation are working on and grappling with, which is letting go of reaction and internalization, which means you say something and then I apply a meaning to it. In fact, I just was talking to a CEO this morning about this. We got very deep into it. You say something, I apply my meaning to it. And it can just be my meaning of a word or a phrase. And that triggers me about something that causes me to have a reaction. Mm-hmm. A reaction that then takes me off of the best path to success for that, or the highest level of effectiveness that I could realize as a leader, mm-hmm. or that I could help my team realize, right? Because I can't get myself out of the way, or I can't remove my own meaning from it. So I think that's where true self-actualization and wisdom comes. And that this is above and beyond maturity, right? Because the mature person could see that and just use discipline to hold themselves back, or impulse control, right? From the initial reaction, and then, go home and kick the dog later, mm-hmm. right? And say, oh, well, I didn't like when Dove said that, or blah, blah, blah. This is a couple steps above that. That's what I'm working on. And I've come a long way with it. And I just keep telling myself, okay, it's progress, not perfection. I will probably never be perfect at this. But the leaders and the iconic people in our world that I really want to be more like, that's what they practice. You can see it. It's grace, it's dignity, it's giving people the benefit of the doubt, and really removing our own meaning from things, so that we are open, we are a vessel, instead of, just being this reactive mechanism. Very,
very well said. Again, it's part of the unconscious thing that people don't realize, is that you meet somebody who looks like this and you go, oh, and there's something that comes up in your head because this face reminds you of somebody else's face, and you're not even thinking of that at the time. You don't think, oh, this reminds me of my Uncle Bob, who was a molester. It's just that, there's a certain shape of jaw, or a certain color of eye, or, something, or a tone of voice, or a certain amount of swagger or lack of certainty in a voice that sets you off in a trigger. Mm-hmm. And you don't know what that is. And it's important to recognize that. Now, the first level of it is the impulse control. To say, okay, I'm not going to bite this person's head off because of something. But, I think the point here, Karen, that you made, that I think is important for everybody to get, is that's not enough. Because listen, repression is not the same as dealing with it. right? Awareness and repression are vastly different. If you have awareness at the level of, yes, I can see that I want to smash this person's face in, but I'm not going to because I know it's not really about them. That's one level below the most important level, which is I need to look at that. And the next level is, what am I going to do about it? And that's why I say leadership, you'll see this everywhere throughout my writing. Leadership requires the courage of self-analysis, the courage of actually having somebody help you, because you cannot get there alone. I don't care who you are. I don't care how smart you are. I've been doing this as a profession for 34 years, and I've been working on myself for more than 40 years actively. And I can tell you, as good as I am, and I am really spectacular, I can tell you, I've never yet been able to be fully objective in my subjective reality, because you can't. It's not possible. We all need help. And that's a vitally important piece of all of us to get. So whether you're reaching out to Karen or me or somebody else, or it's not about reaching out to your mom or your aunt or your best friend. It's like, get somebody who can have some objectivity, who you haven't sold your stuff to, who can actually see you in a more objective sense. And that also means that they can tell you how wonderful and amazing you are, because that's also your blind spot. The fact that you could actually compete in an ultra marathon may have seemed like, no, well, I'd never be able to do that. Well, maybe somebody with objectivity can see, hold on a minute, you could totally do that. So that may be what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, I'm actually conducting an experiment on this, and I would love anybody's participation who wants to do so. So the experiment I'm running is, I've been a leader for a long time. You have too, Dove. Everyone on this show listening has. And I believe that one inherent issue that we have to overcome is, again, this idea of self-assessment. And I think that when we rely upon the people in our organization to help us with feedback, right? It's called a 360 assessment. It's a very popular tool. I have yet to see one that is actually true, neutral, unbiased feedback, because you know what? I'm sorry, but even if they're peers in your organization, they are usually projecting their issues onto you, or their fears onto you, or whatever you want to insert into that sentence. That's what happens. They're biases, right? So, and I think even worse, there's a whole segment of our leadership population that is pointing at everybody else saying, oh, I'm great, everybody else needs work. And, we're seeing a low level of retention, and it's a constantly revolving door. And no one in the organization will tell us the truth because they're afraid, right? They're afraid of reprisals. They have to put food on the table for their family. They have their livelihood, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And culturally, unfortunately, we've backed ourselves into a corner here where we don't want to invite conflict with anyone. So we'll say, oh, it really is the boss that needs to go and do some developmental work and needs to make some improvements. But, I shouldn't be the one to tell them, right? Oh, they'll figure it out, or they'll hear it from their peer group or whatever. But
they're smart. They know.
Right. They know. No, they don't know. So this is the experiment that I'm running. Okay. So go to badleadergoodleader.com. And you can just follow the instructions there. It's very, very simple. And I don't even want to know chapter and verse, the whole story, or anything about that. What I do want to know is, if you know of a leader who no one will share the truth with, and they could use some improvement, they could use this opener, they need to hear the truth, because they can be better. They can make a bigger impact, a better impact, right? Or even the leader who has taken those first steps to improve. Hey, let's give them some reinforcement, right? Because if you've done any developmental work like Dove and I have just talked about, it's work. It takes some time. It takes a big amount of energy. And you're right. You make improvements and then you slip back a little bit. And then you make some more improvements and you slip back a little bit. And it's a constant, consistent thing. Okay. It's a commitment, right? And so I want to also applaud leaders who are taking those steps.
Absolutely.
they are making progress, and the people in their organization are seeing it and are so thankful for it. But it's probably those people in the organization that are not going to say, hey, I've seen you making some changes. Good job, right? They're still afraid. They don't want conflict.
Absolutely.
We're happy to conduct this experiment and make a difference in that space.
Fabulous. Fabulous. That's interesting. I'll definitely go and have a look at that. It sounds like a very cool place to go. So as we draw towards the end here, tell us what is it that brings Karen Brown joy?
Well, first of all, I'm a big movie buff. My first job was in a movie theater, being a movie theater usher. And so I see every new movie, and then my favorites I watch over and over. It's my favorite thing to do, to actually turn my brain off and truly relax at night when I'm done for the day, to immerse myself in a great movie. And I'm also a voracious reader, so I love that too. The other thing that I really still love is I'm a student of human beings. I read a book. I actually read 2 books on vacation recently, one of which is called Joy, Inc. by Rich Sheridan. And I loved the human element of it. I still just am that, scientific person who is fascinated with human beings and how we behave, and what makes us tick. So anything I can learn on that subject, I'm always just all over it. And that brings me a lot of joy.
What's one of your movies that you'd say, if you had to say to somebody, go watch a movie, what would it be? You can pick a recent one or an old one.
Yeah, I'll pick a recent one. So I saw First Man when it came out with Ryan Gosling, who is one of my favorite actors. Let's just say he's my celebrity man crush. I'll just put that out there.
Well, and in fact, he's a Canadian. It's already a couple of notches up.
Exactly right. Yeah. Also, I've read a lot about Neil Armstrong. I'm a huge space buff, space geek, whatever you want to call it. And so the way he was able to portray the dichotomies living within Neil Armstrong, I thought was absolutely extraordinary. And I often think, in another life, I probably would have been an actress. And so I just really get into, not only the facts about, and my favorite are always transformative stories, which this is, and true stories.
Sure.
And so I just really dive into all the facts, the story of it, the person, again, because I love human beings and I'm fascinated with them. So, and then you have the landscape of outer space and the moon and doing something for the first time. Incredible.
Pretty cool. So is the thing that brings you joy also your guilty pleasure, or is that something else?
My guilty pleasure? Do you have something specific in mind?
No, whatever is a guilty pleasure for you, that thing that you go like, I really shouldn't, but I love to. It's a guilty pleasure.
Yeah. So guilty pleasure for me now, I was a sugar addict for a long time. I'll just be real with everybody. That was part of my developmental work. And so, my typical reaction to that would be, oh yeah, guilty pleasure is, eating something with sugar in it, something indulgent, something very rich. And honestly, I'm going to sound like a total nutritional geek here right now, square. But I've replaced that now with something called protein bites that are like protein and organic maple syrup, organic vegan chocolate chips, and nut butter, 100% natural nut butter. And they're like candy to me, only I don't have to eat as many. And, they don't bother my waistline and actually help me, stay fit and active and strong. Also, I very much appreciate a lovely glass of wine, and I could have, before said 2, 3, 4 glasses, bottle of wine, but no, it feels better to just have one and, just really pick a good one. I'm a big fan of Italian and French wines now because I traveled there for 2 big races recently, last year and the year before. And, I love discovering new things. So that's what those wines are for me. And just, reflecting on the day and, the connections, the conversations I've had, talking about new concepts. I really, that whole thing, all of that, I love it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, as we finish up here, I just want to ask you to leave our listeners, our viewers, with something that's a piece of practical guidance that you could give them, something that they could put into action, preferably in the next 24 hours, but certainly within the next few work days. What would that thing be? What would you say to them?
Tap into the dream. So this is another thing that's in the book, along with a couple of other things that we really rolled by very quickly that you just brought up organically. I didn't even prompt you on them. I thought, oh, he's read the book. Yeah. And tapping into the dream really is this premise that picking the largest, scariest, audacious, ridiculous seeming dream that you can think up, like think Iron Cowboy, right? Or think Ultraman or Ironman World Championships or something along those lines that is so big that it causes you to break out in a cold sweat because you have no idea how you can achieve it, but you have an emotional connection to it. Run with that. Tap into that. That is the gateway. And I mean, it's been proven over and over and over, interview after interview, situation after situation, that is a gateway to higher levels of performance. So I would say, especially for our business colleagues out there, the CEOs who are looking to go to that next level and really don't know how, why don't you look at that area? I think that is somewhat a blind spot for leaders in America. Look at that. Give it some time, give it some attention, give it some credence. And,
Fabulous.
When you find that thing that just makes you want to jump off the couch and do something and also makes you break out in a cold sweat because you have no idea how you do it, that's what you should do.
I agree. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Karen, please tell our viewers, our listeners, where they can find out more about you and all the wonderful resources that you offer.
Wonderful. Here's where you go. The name of my company is Velocity Leadership Consulting.com. And if you put a / at the end of that with Lead Loyal, which is the name of Dove's show, you can connect with me. You can read about the book. You can get the Transforming Limiting Beliefs document that I talked about and a lot of other cool things. And you can share them with other people.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Karen. It was a real pleasure, honor having you here. Thank you so much for all that you shared, for your wonderful insights and your clarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Dove. What a pleasure.
And for you, dear listener, remember, as always, information is worth the hole in the donut. Transformation comes from application. So don't just listen, put it into use. Take action on what it is you've learned today. And remember, you can chat about this show or any of our past episodes by going to our community inside Facebook. Just go and search in Facebook, Dove Barron Leadership and Loyalty Podcast, and we can chat each other right there. Remember, the research consistently shows that the biggest challenges facing even the most successful companies is somewhat counterintuitive in that these fast-growing companies often hit a point where they realize that they're spending a fortune attracting, training, and developing their talent only to have them leave at an alarming rate. If you're sick of investing and training and developing your talent only to have them leave before you get your ROI, then come talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide you with the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside of your organization. Full Monty Leadership, providing you with the concrete soft skills to get you and your organization to the top and keep you there. Why? Because you can't outsource authenticity. Also remember to stop by the Matrix, matrix.fullmontyleadership.com, to get my authentic leadership matrix self-assessment. It's your tool, you can use it, it's valued at $197. It's absolutely free to you for tuning in. And remember, you can play us on Google Play and on Alexa by simply saying, play Dove Barron podcast. Thank you for sharing this show with everybody you know. And listen, we want to hear from you. We want to know what you got out of the show, what you're going to do with it. Go onto the community on Facebook. Tell us what you got out of the show, what you're going to do with it. And if you feel like you want to tell me personally, you want to write to me, or you feel like I can help you in some way, I'm happy to do that. Simply reach out to me, whether it's as a consultant, a speaker, or just to tell me about something that you're doing. Great. My personal email is dovbaron.com. Reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. I love hearing from my listeners. Thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Till next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about the fact that you did not get your dreams by accident. They are your heart and soul crying out for expression. I'm Dove Barron, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. and I am out.